Hi, folks. Muro here. Last week we spoke about clarity and how that affects choice and how our choices affect clarity. One of the things that I spoke of during that talk was about awareness. Now, we did an episode on awareness earlier this year, and I'd like to bring that back this week as a rebroadcast. I think that there is enough of a correlation between the two, between clarity and between awareness, that it would be worthwhile to have another view of that. So I'll invite you to do so. This is, once again, New Thought Media Network, Choice Your Creative Superpower, and I hope that you enjoy this rebroadcast. Namaste.
Choice, your creative superpower. We have the power to manifest as we dedicate attention to our thoughts, but often miss opportunity to achieve the greatest good. Your superpower is waiting to be unleashed to unlock a fuller, more rewarding world for all. Join us every Thursday at noon Mountain Time for Choice, your creative superpower with Zoe Muro. And now, here's Zoe.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the New Thought Media Network. Welcome to Choice, your creative superpower. My name is Zoe Muro, and I am, as always, delighted to be your host. If you're coming back, it's good to have you here once more. If this is your first time, welcome. We are here each Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 12 noon Mountain Time, to explore how you can use your awesome superpower of choice to create the greatest good in your life experience. I'm a religious science practitioner and a transformational coach. I work with people who are looking to live their lives to the fullest. Today, in episode 31, we'll be looking at choice and awareness. Now, if you've listened to a number of my talks on choice, you've probably heard me talk about awareness from time to time. Oh, I thought it was about time to devote an episode to this particular topic. So, I know you've heard me say this before, but I do love this topic. It's rich, it's informative, it's subject to lots of different perspectives, interpretations, and different applications. Maybe that's why I like it so much. When I was a personal trainer and a performance coach, awareness was one of my ABCs. It was awareness, balance, and commitment. Now, in the physical realm, I was referring to awareness of how one's body moves and how it gets through the day. The reality of it is, when you look at those three, awareness, balance, and commitment, that can apply to so many different aspects of one's life. Okay, so the awareness in terms of the physical awareness, well, that was kind of the short version of what that's about. For our purposes, I'd like to expand on the physical aspect because there are different types of choices that you might make relative to that. Now, we can talk about awareness of our physical environment on what we can go as small as the room or even the desk or workstation that you might be at, or some other physical specific location in which we live or work. We could talk about a neighborhood, a city, all the way out to the universe. Suppose. Well, I have to say, personally, I tend to draw the line awareness-wise at the planet level. Although I did have a really breathtaking VR, that's a virtual reality experience, about the space station, what it was like to actually be in space. It was just astounding. And it really increased my awareness of how different being in space is when you look at it from reality as opposed to science fiction shows. There's also the physical awareness of one's body. Awareness of one's physical capabilities and capacity. How your body moves, how it allows you to do the things you want to do or hold you back from doing the things that you want to do. So if you're looking, for example, at how you can improve your physical conditioning, simply jumping into an exercise routine because some celebrity was doing that, or someone you know who's really in great shape is doing that same routine, that's not really being aware of your physical needs. Understanding what you can do, understanding what you need to be able to do, understanding where you are right now physically, having that awareness brings you to the ability to make a choice as to what type of exercise, how much exercise, etc. And it's not a one-time deal. Maintaining your awareness as you go through your physical regimen make a huge difference. It's also awareness from what I'll call the medical perspective. So are you aware of what your blood pressure is? How well or how poorly you're breathing? Your digestive system. All of these medical markers have significance in our daily life. If you have not had a physical in a long time, and a long time depends on how old you are. If it's been more than a year and you're, let's say, 50 plus, get a physical. Earlier than that, I could probably push it to 2, even 3 years. But the point is, each and every one of us has our own physical specific needs, and understanding them from an external and an internal perspective gives us an awareness that is key to our physical well-being. There's awareness of one's body in terms of perceived or believed appearance. There's awareness of how one's physicality affects other people. This is just the physical aspect of awareness. But I do want to dig in a little bit here because there are some relevant choices that I can see you making. So in no particular order, I'm going to go back to I want to stay with the physical one. I want to talk about appearance and awareness and how all of that affects our choice. One of the most egregious aspects of our society, at least here in the United States, is the belief that there is a physical ideal. And the farther you veer from that ideal, the less attractive you are. Think about the choices you've made when you were concerned about your looks. And if you have never had to deal with that, bravo. Many of us have succumbed to this concern, and far too often. Feeling unattractive or being concerned that you're perceived as being unattractive can lead to choices that have devastating consequences. There's yo-yo dieting, the idea that you take off 20 pounds and then you gain back 20 pounds. Or diets that seem to emphasize only 3/4 of the word diet. That is die, D-I-E, because those restrictive diets that eliminate important nutrients and disrupt your body's chemistry, or encourage you to restrict your calories so much that, yes, your body loses weight, but it's losing fat and muscle. All right? That's not healthy. Your awareness of your body was preempted by this concern. If you use the compare and contrast perspective of body image, you are almost guaranteed to be making poor choices. Look, I get it. If you want to be seen as being attractive, there are plenty of people and descriptions that you can attempt to measure up to. But, and this is a really, really big but, a very important, very good big but, do you feel good in your body? If you do, if you can hold on to what you feel is attractive about yourself, why choose to do something that can be hurtful, even life-threatening? You know, I have spent decades as a trainer. It was my primary work at one point. Now it's very much secondary, but I have seen every body shape imaginable. I can assure you that a perfectly chiseled body does not make you attractive if you're ignoring your own spirit, your own identity, your own sense of self. You know what's truly attractive? Confidence, comfort, groundedness, self-esteem, sweetness, loving kindness. Because all of that is projected as your energy, as your presence. And hey, that's my perspective and how I choose to look at this. You, of course, get to make your choice. Being truly aware of one's physical well-being can lead to choices that will not only support your body, but truly extend your physical capacity, your enjoyment of life, and quite literally, your lifespan. That's why it's so important to have baseline measurements of all of our physical attributes, from our height and weight to our measurements, our blood pressure, our cholesterol, all of that. And it becomes even more important as we age, because our bodies do eventually bear the effects of wear and tear. One of the things I try to stress with clients about physical health as they age is that the earlier in life they develop good physical habits, the better for them in the long run. The greater the awareness that we have of our physical bodies and what it takes to maintain them in good health, the easier it is to develop good habits and avoid bad habits. Now, I said the earlier you do this in life, the better it is. And that's true, but please understand that it's never too late. All right? It is never too late to do the right thing, to make the right choice. For example, choosing to learn about food and cooking. It can lead to a lifetime of nourishing and enjoyable food. Your physical awareness can also provide a great indicator of emotional stress. So yes, your physical awareness can actually tell you and inform your emotional awareness. When that heart rate starts to spike or breathing becomes shallow, odds are, unless there's some obvious, clear physical cause for it, you're experiencing emotional stress of some sort. And understand that your body doesn't know the difference between stress that is quote unquote negative and stress that is quote unquote positive, what we would refer to as anxiety versus excitement. Your body actually responds in a very similar way. So being able to be aware of what else is going on becomes very important. You know, once we have an understanding, for example, that we are indeed stressed, we get to choose how we want to deal with what it is that's stressing us. Sometimes the best choice is to approach it from a physical action first. Anytime that I can feel that I'm breathing in shallowly, That was my trigger. That was my awareness saying, something is going on. So what is my first activity going to be? My first action? It's going to be a physical action. I'm going to breathe more deeply and slowly. I'm going to allow my body to bring in the oxygen that it needs to calm my system. And then it becomes much easier to think, to evaluate, and to consider what your next steps are. That deep breathing brings in oxygen, because when you are stressed and you breathe shallowly, you're actually getting less oxygen and you have more carbon dioxide in your system. And that becomes a stressor. And the physical stress increases the emotional stress, and it goes around and around. So being aware of that connection allows you to choose how you want to move forward. So you can think of awareness in this case as being a way to determine where you are right now. You can consider how best to get to where you want to be. Earlier, I had mentioned the idea of awareness of how your own physicality can affect other people. This is a really interesting and, quite honestly, sometimes confounding aspect of physicality. Because physical awareness is actually a two-way street. Being aware of how we are affected in our bodies, but also how we affect others. So, here's a fairly easy way to explain what I'm talking about. Are you a hugger? Are you a backslapper? Handshaker? Stand real close to someone when you talk with them kind of talker? Well, guess what? Those are all examples of how your physicality can affect another person. Sometimes in a positive way, sometimes not so much. Once you become aware of how you are affected or how others are affected, you can choose whether to or how to adjust your behavior accordingly. Now, this choice is actually relevant to every dimension of awareness. How do you choose to act? How do you choose to react? Your awareness gives you the greatest possibility for making the best possible choice. I actually spent more time talking about physical awareness than I thought I was going to. So let's move on to a deeper, more profound dimension of awareness, the idea of emotional awareness. I had mentioned that before, how the physical awareness can help you understand more about the emotional awareness. And I would say, if ever there was a rewarding activity in personal and spiritual development, I would vote unequivocally for developing and enforcing and enhancing your emotional awareness. It's way too easy for us to become completely immersed in our emotions. And we can lose perspective. I mean, to the extreme of negativity. I mean, we talk about being in a blind rage, to the, let's call it the intoxication, if you will, of positivity, floating on cloud nine, or we're blinded by love. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Speaking of awareness and perspective, now you can argue that choosing a particular perspective can affect your awareness significantly, but the opposite has validity as well. For example, if I were to take the perspective that all youth are irresponsible, I am unlikely to be aware of the great accomplishments and the selfless acts that the very same youth that I'm concerned about can produce and that they're engaged in. If I am aware that age is not a predictor of responsibility or capability, Now I am open to seeing accomplishments and selfless acts regardless of age. So when you choose a particular perspective, you can become more open or more closed to what you can actually be aware of. Now, this leads to another aspect of awareness, or more accurately, I suppose, a lack of awareness. That would be bias. And of course, if you were to take bias to an extreme, prejudice. We live in a world that is filled to the brim with bias. Sometimes we prefer to think of it as preference, but there is a significant difference between these. A bias predisposes us towards something or away from something, and in turn, it informs our preference, our choice. Now, if we add judgment, and I'm not talking about discernment here, all right? I'm talking about judging, right? So if we add judgment into the mix, now we're working our way into prejudice, prejudging. Being aware of bias and being aware of prejudice are critical to understanding the experiences of people whose lives are so different from our own, despite what we might see on the outside. You know, as a society, we are starting to become more aware of our biases and prejudices, but they remain pervasive. And unless we actively choose to ask, to examine, to explore, to understand, we miss out on life experiences that we otherwise would overlook or perhaps ignore. I was going to use the word woke, but I mean, it fits perfectly here. The only reason why I'm hesitating is that, unfortunately, the word has been co-opted by the very people who actually need to be woke the most. But you get the idea. You know, choosing awareness in regard to social justice is not simply a good idea. It actually has the potential to be world-changing. Think of all the choices that can flow from being aware of what it means to be disenfranchised, to be marginalized, to be poor in a country that is the wealthiest in the world. Choosing to be aware of how blessed, and yes, privileged, the word is privileged, right? To be aware of how privileged so many of us are simply because of the color of our skin or our ethnic background, the language that we speak, where we live, our appearance, our age, our sexual preference, our gender identification. The list goes on and on. Frankly, just being aware of how long that list is can lead to choices you might never have contemplated. And as an additional wonderful benefit, the more that you can see the ways in which you are indeed entitled, all right, ways that you are indeed privileged, the better the choices that you will make in this world, because you will be making choices based on gratitude, based on a sense of abundance. That's a tremendous power. You know, in an earlier broadcast, we looked at the stories we tell and the narratives that we associate with those stories. And that's yet another example of the intersection of the interaction of awareness and choice. I get to choose the stories I tell. I get to choose the narrative that I attach to each story. I can be aware or unaware of how these stories and their associated narratives affect me, how they open me, how they close me, how they provide for opportunities, how they create limitations. I have personally, deliberately chosen to be aware as often as possible. I have deliberately chosen to understand the effect of my stories and my narratives. I've deliberately chosen to strengthen, to deepen, to broaden my awareness so that I can enable my best possible choices going forward. Do I always succeed? No. I'm a work in progress. I also have to say here that I can choose to be completely aware of as much as possible, but then choose to ignore the information. That's a choice too. You know, there is a very big potential downside to becoming aware. That is your internal response to this new knowledge. Now, I said a potential downside. Okay. So when you become aware of things that disturb you, things about yourself perhaps, or about a situation, do you become self-critical? Do you become despondent? Do you feel foolish? Or do you see it as another part of your continual evolution, your growing edge, your ability to push beyond limitations? If you haven't watched the episode that I did on mindset, I'd strongly recommend it because that's where the difference lies. You can find it on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and put in choice your creative superpower and then the word mindset, it'll pop right up. Are you aware of your mindset? Are you aware of how, when, and where, and why your mindset might flip from an open growth mindset to a closed fixed mindset? Are you aware of how a change in mindset can affect your choices? Now, there's something I wanted to read here. Now, somewhere between 85 and 43 BCE, there was a Syrian actor named Publius Syrus, and he wrote, "In knowing nothing, life is most delightful." The poet Thomas Gray picked up on that centuries later and wrote, "Where ignorance is bliss, 'tis folly to be wise." And then we get to the more familiar phrase, ignorance is bliss. Well, I suppose you can argue that at times it can seem so. But to anyone who treasures the concept of a world that works for everyone, or who endeavors to live their life as fully as possible, hey, take on the burden of awareness. It's well worth it. A couple of other things I want to read. This is from Stephen Handel. He wrote that understanding the limitations of your knowledge puts you at an advantage from people who overestimate their knowledge or aren't aware of their own ignorance. Adam Grant said, "If knowledge is power, knowing what you don't know is wisdom." If knowledge is power, knowing what you don't know is wisdom. There's an aspect of awareness that we all can benefit from. Well, folks, as always, I've presented some ideas and perspectives here, but it's your ideas. and your definitions and your perspectives, your mindset that will inform your choices. So we have some comments here. I want to take a look, see what we have going on. Hi, Fiona. Good to see you. Gratitude grounded on the awareness of an inherent abundance of the universe. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Good to see you. Good to see you as always, Wayne. Ooh, I like this. Let us be known by the melting of our walls. That's really good. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay. I hope you've heard something that brings into sharper focus how you're working with awareness in your life, or how you might benefit to do so even more. Well, that's all I have for today. You can always send me an email if you have anything in particular that you would like to get into. Okay. You can reach me at zodemuro@gmail.com, and I would be delighted, absolutely delighted to hear from you. Make sure you spend some time this week on ntmedia.org. There's so much going on, whether we're talking about prayer, meditation, information, discussion, it's all there. Personally, I've been listening to ntmedia.org/listen for New Thought music. It's wonderful. So folks, get out there, see what's going on. If you have an opportunity to contribute to the New Thought Media Network, that would be wonderful as well. You can go to ntmedia.org/donate. That would enable us to bring to the largest possible audience all of this goodness that we work on to make this a world that works for everyone. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Until we meet again, choose wisely. Much love, much, much love, and so many blessings. Namaste.
Choice, your creative superpower. We have the power to manifest as we dedicate attention to our thoughts, but often miss opportunity to achieve the greatest good. Your superpower is waiting to be unleashed to unlock a fuller, more rewarding world for all. Join us every Thursday at noon Mountain Time for Choice, your creative superpower with Zo DeMuro.